Alright guys, so here is the example game. Oh, excuse me, choking. Here's the example game I've got for the new Tilling Thunder. This is an absolute fantastic game, a perfect example of how this deck can play out. So this is opening hand, good, not great. You would rather have a mountain so you can start cycling right away. We do have a board sweep, it's great, Grim Discovery and Tilling Tree Folk to start the recovery. Like I said, good, not great. I will make the start here with Forgotten Cave so that I can cycle the second Forgotten Cave on next turn. I'm not going to have a turn 2 play at this point in time, so cycling that is not such a big deal. It's almost necessary. You actually won't run into a lot of turn 2 plays. Most of your games you'll run into plays on turn 3. You can't get started any earlier than turn 3 other than the occasional burn spell, because you don't really have anything worth recovering with Grim Discovery, and the worm is going to require lands in the grave, and you're not going to have those on turn 2. You can harrow on turn 3 to get that going, but other than that, you're running a little short. Excuse me. So I mistapped there. I cycled the cave and I get another forest. Opponent starts with a bit of life gain. I'm not too worried about it. He puts down the Legionnaire, kind of a nice thing to have the life gain for, so he can play the 2 life and get that out early. The first strike ability is really what's going to kind of slow me down there. I can chump block and stuff, but first strike is going to kill all my creatures from that body. So I make the play here. I play Cartographer. I have a Firebolt. I can deal with it later on. I'm going to wait and try and get this card draw going. Really, it's the best thing you want to do with this deck, is you want to be able to draw cards, hold off and kill threats as long as possible. So here he's got a second one. Now all of a sudden it's a bit of an issue. So I will Firebolt, and I Firebolt the untapped one, so that my Cartographer can attack through. And another thing you will notice here, I played the land before cycling. Not a good idea. You want to most of the time cycle and then play a land, because if I had drawn a mountain, then I could play the mountain and cycle the cave. But because I played the forest before I cycled the dragger, I do not have the option to play that mountain if I had drawn it. So just something to keep in mind, make sure that you cycle before you play lands. Just to keep things interesting. So now things are still close thanks to the fact that my opponent is at 2 lands and had to pay the 2 life to get those going. Veteran Armorsmith comes out, so he's clearly running a Soldier's deck, and this is going to be trouble. They're usually very, kind of aggro, very heavy on creatures. Luckily I have this Sandstorm, but right now what I'm thinking is I need to find ways to build up my graveyard. You can see here my grave count is only 2, and I need Threshold to get that going. And this is kind of fun, actually, getting this to happen. It's really, I have so much fun with this. I can't say it enough, because you have to sit here and kind of figure ways you can destroy your own lands and get rid of your own creatures. I'm like, oh well, I can throw away the Cartographer, chump blocking to get that in the grave. I'm like, I can play the Harvest Worm without returning a basic land, and that goes to my grave. Something to keep in mind, you can do that. You can play it and not return a basic land and have it go to your grave if you're trying to get that going. I am going to decide to flashback the Firebolt to get rid of the Porcelain Legionnaire, because if more Armorsmiths come out, he's going to be too hard to deal with, and the fact that he has first strike, I really wanted to get him off the table right away. Cartographer is obviously going to stay back to block if necessary. There's no point in attacking into a 2/3 or just throwing him away. Like I said, I am still thinking about Sandstorm, but I killed that off with the flashback, so right now it's not a priority. I have Resounding Thunder in hand. I can use that to burn something down in the early game before. It's ideally you want to cycle it for that 8 cost, but what it really comes down to is if you have to use it, use it. Don't just sit on it and take damage because you want to get that ultimate ability off. You see right here, I'm going to use it to kill off the Zephyronaut. It's a great soldier token, and if he's running kind of the tribal, which he clearly is, he's going to be able to, activate that kinship ability every turn, so that has to go. You see here I played the second Forgotten Cave. When it comes to Harrows and stuff, these are going to be the first things you want to sacrifice off, because then you can return them with your Cartographer and Tree Folk. These, having these on the battlefield is bad because it kind of kills your card draw. You want to be able to draw cards with them, but I'm not hitting any red mana, so at this point in time I really kind of needed those in play. Is he still being aggressive? I am going to attack through with 2. He does have the Armorsmith's going to swing through and hit me down to 10 on this turn, but sometimes you got to do it. 10 is about the middle ground. Once I hit 10, then I start playing defensive. Comes down with a Ballinot Cohort. It's a 3/4 currently because of all the abilities. And now is the point in time where I'm like, okay, I need to kill these off. Now I'm thinking defensive. I'm like, how do I get my threshold up? So Terramorphic Expanse is going to be one way that's going to bump it up. I decided to get a Swamp. Probably a bad idea. I probably should have gone for a Mountain, but it's not going to really make a difference. Now kind of an interesting play. I play the Cartographer, so I'm sitting here and the whole time I'm thinking I need to increase my threshold. But by doing that I'm reducing my graveyard count. But here's my thought. These 2 in play, I can use them to chump block, and that's going to add another card. So whereas I was with 3 with Terramorphic Expanse, by playing the Cartographer, I go down to 2, and they're both going to die and bring me up to 4. So yeah, like I said, I had a lot of fun with this. Things you got to be aware that, okay, if I use Grim Discovery to return 2 cards, it's only -1 because Grim Discovery is going to the graveyard. Just, fun stuff to think about. So he plays a Steep, giving his armor protection from green, which is fine because I wanted to double block on the cohort anyways. So I will do that. He's going to only be able to kill off one of them, but he is going to lose the cohort. Oh no, first strike, I apologize. He keeps the cohort. That was my hope, is that I could kill it off, but the fact that it has first strike keeps me from doing so. And he plays the second, and now it's like crunch time. It's definitely like, how do I get Swirling Sands into play? So cycling the Thicket to see if I draw something. Count goes up to 4. Terramorphic is going to make it 5. And I'm just grabbing lands. I probably should have been a little smarter about this. And now you're thinking, okay, Harvest Worm would bring it up to 6, but I don't have enough mana to cast it, and I'm going to take a lot of damage. I'm going to take 5 off those. So I decided, well, here I can use the Tree Folk. It's going to reduce my count in the graveyard down to 3, but it gives me a blocker, and again, I'm going to use these 2 to block the cohorts, and they're going to go to the grave, so it's really going to keep me at 5 by doing this. And I should be able to pull this off next turn. I can cycle the Thicket, so now I'm going to be at 6. And that's the only play I'm going to be able to do. Grim Discovery, you see here, again, very weird on the math because I'm at 6. Now Grim Discovery is going to take 2 off that, puts me at 4 in the grave. Grim Discovery goes in, brings it back to 5. But I have options now for cycling, and you'll see how this works out. I am down to 8 life. He is going to play another creature. So all the time it's just making my Sandstorm that much better. I'm going to chump block the cohorts. These 2 are going to die. You see I am now up to 5 cards, as I said, in my graveyard. And he plays yet another creature. Now this is more troublesome. Aven Squire is a flying soldier. If you look at Swirling Sandstorm, it does 5 damage to each creature without flying, so I really needed to top deck something because this is going to be a 3/3 flyer that's going to kill me in 2 turns if I did not draw into something. Luckily I have Firebolt. I do have an option to kill it off, but you do get some cycling here. I had more choices to be able to draw into it. So you see I'm at 5 here right now. I'm going to have to use the Firebolt to kill off the flyer, which is great. Puts me to 6. Now I easily get 7. Terramorphic Expanse gives me 7. Cycling the Thicket, 7. All I have to do is make sure that I leave enough mana open to cast this for 4. Harrow right now is going to put more cards in the grave, and this is something I think is a bit of a misplay on my part. I should have here. I cast the Sandstorm first. I think I should have played Harrow first, because when I cast the Sandstorm, it does not leave me enough mana to make a play. If I use Harrow first, then I can I can play the Sandstorm still and possibly make another play off the cycling. Or play the Harvest Worm. You see right now I'm down to 2. All I can do is cycle the Dragger, which gets me a second Harrow. So now you see, even though I'm down 14-5, I things have really evened up. I managed to wipe the board of 5 creatures, and my opponent's down to 3 cards at hand. When you take, that's the biggest killer for aggro, is when they drop their hand, they go all out, and then you are able to wipe the board, you put yourself back to 0. So the Sandstorm is really the MVP in this game. Now I am going to sit here and recast the Firebolt to try and kill off the cohort before it gets that additional +1/+1 by an extra white creature. Unfortunately, my opponent does use the last card in his hand, which will give it 1/1, and he draws a card. I wanted to get rid of it because of the first strike ability. Again, that's a very tough thing for me to deal with in this deck. But I have mana now. I am going to use off the Harrows, and I make a bit of a misplay here. I am, excuse me, choking. I did say earlier that you want to use the Harrow, you want to sacrifice off the caves. Now, I did need to use it to get rid of 1 basic so that I could play the Harvest Worm, but you'll see in the next one I get another, I use it to get rid of another basic land, which is not the right play. I should have gotten rid of one of the Forgotten Caves so that I had something to cycle later on. So now I play the Harvest Worm. In this game, you'll notice that I made the mistake, and I even did it here in the commentary, where I keep forgetting that the cohort has first strike. So, I think, okay, I'll play the Harvest Worm, it's going to block and kill the cohort, but the first strike is going to keep it alive while the Harvest Worm dies. So, he gets Loyal Cathar, and it's a great soldier. It's going to come back even when I kill it. I have to block at this point, being down at 5 life. But at this point in time, I've got so much mana, it's going to be no problem. I do top deck into another Sandstorm, and right now I'm at 13 cards. It's not even a question whether or not I have enough threshold, enough cards in the graveyard to get threshold. So that's going to go down. Now I'm going to play the Cartographer. I'm going to get back some land cards to get this draw engine going yet again. Tilling Treefolk can go down again, and you see this is where I made that mistake. This is where it comes into effect, because right now the only lands I can return, I have a Terramorphic, there's a Swamp, and a Tranquil Thicket. Now, had I used the Harrow to get rid of a Forgotten Cave, I could use that to get a Forgotten Cave back and cycle it with the Mountain, but I made that misplay, so now I'm a card draw off where I should be. I will use the Terramorphic and get out a Mountain, and I do note while I did that it was my last basic land. Very important to keep that in mind. So the Cathar comes back as a 2/1 that cannot block. I'm not too worried about it right now, but he does make a play here, putting down another Veteran Armor, making it a 2/2. I do decide to trade it with the Cartographer. Right now we're sitting at a point in time where the Treefolk can hold off the armor and keep it at pretty much a stalemate between those two. Getting thickets, and I want to just draw and draw and draw. I start to play the Harvest Worm, but realize that with the Tilling Treefolk, I return the Swamp. Again, a misplay. I should have returned the Terramorphic and left that there so I could play the other Harvest Worm. But that's okay, because we'll cycle the other one, and now I hit into a Dragger, which I will cycle. What I was going to do is, cycle that one, and then use the Unearth ability on the 2 Draggers that I had in the graveyard, and do damage with those. It's something that he can block, but he's going to lose the armor. But I did actually, top deck into a Resounding Thunder on that, so I am going to use, you have plenty of mana at this point. I am going to cycle it to do 6 damage to my opponent, and I will still, have enough mana open to play the Dragger, I think, after I make the drop. Yeah. There's no point in playing the Terramorphic. Like I said, I kept note that was the last basic land in my deck, so that's just going to be a wasted card. But I do get the drop. I am able to get back at least one of my Draggers to swing through, and he chooses not to block, bringing his bolt to 5. Now he's at a point where he can attack through with armor, clearly does not draw anything, and I get lucky. I hit another Thunder. I did have the Dragger could come back to swing through. He would probably trade at that point in time, but I don't even need it because I got this Resounding Thunder, which I will simply cycle to win the game. So there you go. Hopefully that gives you a great idea. This is great. You see how much I drew through in the time it took my mono white opponent to draw 20 cards off his deck, I managed to draw through just about 40. So I think this is a great game. Showed, coming back from being at the wrong end of this, the power of wiping the board with Swirling Sandstorms. You get to see the cycling ability on the Resounding Thunders. You get to see the draw, the Harrows. So this is a video that has it all. I do apologize if you were reading the article. I do write up an analysis for another game I did with this deck, but somewhere along the way, I don't know where I saved the video. It's been lost. It was one that was not saved to my game replay, so I could not get it back. And I went and sat down to another game, and this is that. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed it, and definitely take out the time to check out the other decks.